Hi folks, thank you for joining me today. This video is going to be aimed more towards developers, but like with any video, if you are brand new and you want to learn something new about the capabilities perhaps, please stick around and you'll find out some cool new tips and features. So this video is aimed towards covering off YAML and the new preview capabilities that sit within Power Apps with strong inspiration from a video that Matthew Devaney did recently. And essentially in his video, he's going through and talking about how we can use the new YAML capabilities to go through and create forms and a number of other options, essentially enabling user to create content programmatically. And in the video, he shows an element of not using AI to go through and create these forms and essentially call out some really cool capabilities which helps developers go through, reuse content and so on. And essentially gets to a point where we have a form, if I can quickly find it, which has been generated through YAML, and then there's a bit more flexibility afterwards where he's going through and ultimately going through and updating it. And I thought, well, let's take that to the next level. I know he doesn't want to use AI with it, but I'm going to change that slightly and start looking at the world of ChatGPT. And actually, rather than creating things manually, is can we use automation to a point to actually go through and create this content for us? Now, to really set the scene, let's start off by, what does YAML look like within Power Apps? How do we see it and so on? So essentially what we have here, I have my example form. I'm going to go through and you can see this is a Canvas Power App. I can go through, add in a text label, and I might call this one first name as an example. We might go through and get some input. So here we'll have a text input, and we might find a button where we'll go through and submit our field, so we can go through and get that updated. Now the new preview feature is, once I come through, I have an option now to view code. And if I view that code, you can see here that I have all this information available to me. So here we have submit, we have our submit button, we have our text input, and we have our label here. And essentially what I can do is I can go through and copy that. And I'm going to open up another folder. So we'll open up this up in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. And we'll just call this EX and try and make this a little bit easier to use. There we go. And here we have my example. Now, presently, the YAML editor in here, I can't go through and make changes. If I try to make a change, you'll notice that it's a read-only editor. Hopefully that will change soon. But if I go into Visual Studio Code, I can come into here. I can see that we have some options. So maybe I go through and change this to full name. If we go to our button here, we've got submit. We might change that to something like submit form. Potentially, there's other options in here that we can change it and make updates to. So what I can do now is take that code, if I go through and copy it, and if I go back into my app, close that off, I can right click, paste, and paste the code. Now, we have a minor error that popped up here. Obviously that's just because I've got a screen in there. So I might just need to go through and say, right, let's just take my code that we have here, copy that instead. So I'm not going to take the screen or the other components, go through, paste that through, give that a second, and you can see that it's gone through and pasted the new controls. So here we have full name and we've got submit form. Now we're going to take this component and take it to the next level. So essentially what I've got, if I jump back into ChatGPT here, I'm going to go through and ask a question. Here I've got create YAML code for Power Apps input form that includes 4 fields: first name, last name, birthday, and address. And essentially what it's done is it's gone through and said, right, well, I want to go through and generate this code. So it said form and it's got a title to it and there's some fields and some other bits and pieces. So I can go through and copy that. And I'll copy that into this area here. Let's delete those. I'm going to go through and I'm going to go paste and then paste the code. Now what happens is we get an error. And there's some elements to this. We're not going to worry too much about these errors because what I don't want to focus on is how to necessarily fix the error. We want things to be kind of working from the off. Now in practice, that's not necessarily the case in an actual production scenario. But for this element, I just really want to demonstrate how ChatGPT can help and where it kind of falls down. So here, we have an error that pops up, and what we can do is go through and ask it some additional questions, such as, right, well, I've got an error. Can you help me through it? Here's the details. and it's gone through and it's regenerated. And again, I'll go through and copy that, paste it in. Again, same error. So instead, what I've done is I've taken an existing form. So here we've actually hooked onto the accounts table, and we've gone through and got the sort of standard fields that come through. And what I can do here is I can go through and view the code. You can see there's a lot more information in here, but I can go through and copy it. And once I copy it, I can then take that, pass it back into ChatGPT. And here I'm saying, right, using the below, can you regenerate my form? So what we're doing here is giving it a bit more information. We've got form 1, we've got control, a whole load of other bits and pieces which are in here, using an example from the actual app itself. And if I scroll down a bit further, you can see that it's gone through and it's generated this for us. So I can go through and copy that and paste it into my app. And here's what I've done over here. So we have our form. You can kind of see, right, well, there's 4 inputs in here. We wanted 4 fields. And if I go through and actually view the code for it, you know, everything, logic would dictate that, well, everything's working, everything's fine. The only minor issues with these is, and this is what Matthew kind of shows much better, is, you know, he's gone through, he has the table set up, he's added the fields onto it using a flow in the background. That's one thing that ChatGPT can't really do for you. But assuming that you have those tables already within your underlying source, you might be able to go through and update this. But here we have some errors, and you can see we've got an error here. Data source is incorrect. You'll notice that there's the display name isn't showing up, or rather than the display name, the title of the field isn't showing up, because essentially the parent doesn't have a display name, which you can see here is an error. Obviously, you can go through and update that manually. If I go back into Visual Studio Code, I can go through and say, right, well, we've got a number of controls here. Here we've got display name. We'll change that out to be first name. And if we go down a bit further, we can see that there's other elements that show up in here. We might go a bit further down. Here we've got last name. Let's quickly go through and update that. And essentially, we'll do this for the remaining. Here we've got birthday. And the final one should be address. So we can go through and update that one to be address. So once we have those components sorted, I can go through, copy that, go back into my app, just pull that to the side very slightly, and we can go through, paste the code, give that just a second to go through and figure it out. And essentially what it's doing is it's taking those changes that we've made in Visual Studio Code and then push them straight into our Canvas app. And you can see here that actually we've gone through, we have those fields populated. All we need to do next is essentially go through and map that through to our data source. But hopefully that showcases how you can use YAML within Power Apps, within Canvas Power Apps. It shows you how you can go through and make changes in the code using Visual Studio Code or other editors of your choice. And also that actually ChatGPT can definitely help you, but you might just need to add a bit more context to enable the generative AI model to actually go through and help you build out those components. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Any questions, as always, please post them in the comments below. And I'll also link Matthew's video below as well, because there's a load of extra information in there, which, again, just builds on top of what you've seen here. Great. Until next time.